And we are live! Hello and welcome to another episode of the Story Engine Workshop Series, a new series wherein we invite creative guests from different creative fields to come and share their top tips and tricks, show us how they operate. We ask them some questions about how they work, and then we do a live creative session using prompts so we can see a creator create in real time, sometimes with input from the chat, and we'll get to learn about the creative process firsthand. It's fun, it's experiential, it's participatory, and we love doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is our I guess it's like our third live stream, but second with a guest.
Yeah, second with a guest.
Second actual workshop as opposed to the workshop tease.
Second actual workshop. And of course, if you missed any of them, you're always able to catch them on our replays, on our YouTube. Hi, everyone who's coming in. I'm seeing we have Samantha coming in from Maryland. Drop in the chat where you are all tuning in from. Eric and I are tuning in from Toronto, where it has been snowmageddon this last weekend. We've had some really record-breaking snowfall of the season. It is hella cold over here, so that's where we are at in Toronto. So if there's anyone tuning in from like Australia or something and you guys are all in the sunshine, or if you're tuning in from the Caribbean, I'm jealous. So jealous. And Peter will tell you where he's tuning from in the second, but maybe reintroducing ourselves for any of you who's joining us for the very first time and you don't know who we are. I'm Miroki. I'm the CEO of the Story Engine. Obviously, we are the Story Engine. We are we create a deck of creative writing prompts so that all of yous, writers and DMs, GMs, educators can get inspired for your next amazing piece of manifesto, I guess, so to say, whether it's your campaign or your next great novel, your next RPG for your classroom, so on and so forth. Eric here is our... Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am the community manager. When you send emails, you likely talk to me. And also, if you're interacting with us on social media, that is definitely me.
Yes, but Eric also does a lot of the creative writing work as well. So don't want to completely discount your skills on that. He has worked on the decks. And then, wait, I'm pointing mirror image pointing this way. Peter.
Yeah, I designed the Story Engine deck, and I've kind of been the lead on designing our new decks and stuff, and I spent a lot of time in the workshop working on that, and I really enjoy it. And I'm calling in from Halifax, where we didn't get Snowmageddon, we got Ice-mageddon, and it's ice everywhere all the time.
All the time, even the summer, right?
The Halifax subreddit was just full of memes about hoarding salt because everyone was trying to hoard. Road salt was sold out everywhere. Somebody photoshopped the cover of The Hobbit, that really beautiful illustration that Tolkien did of Smaug like wrapped up on his little hoard of gold, and they just replaced it all with road salt. It has been delightful here, just delightful. But I actually a little bit of a segue here. Our guest today is someone that I met in Halifax when we were both coming up in creative writing. We shared. Yeah, I don't think I've shared this bit of history. It's only occurring to me now live on the camera. And that's the joy of live. Claire and I met in creative writing workshops at Dalhousie University. And we had a lot of the same friend circle coming up in undergrad. We went to a number of house parties, in addition to all the other things in her bio. Actually, I think this is in her bio, but just a mean fiddler, like absolutely incredible musician. But yeah, actually, I guess without further ado, let's introduce our guest today. So Clare C. Marshall is the founder and the author-publisher behind Faery Ink Press, where she publishes young adult science fiction, fantasy, and horror novels. Her fantasy novel, The Violet Fox, was given an honorable mention in the 2016 Whistler Independent Book Awards, and its sequel, The Emerald Cloth, was nominated for Best YA Novel in the 2019 Prix Aurora Awards. When she's not writing or fiddling up a storm, she enjoys computer games and making silly noises at her two cats, Pinecone and Pavlova. She lives in Calgary
oh my God,
with
those
her husband.
names.
So cute. So cute. But please join us in welcoming Clare C. Marshall.
Yay!
Hello, and welcome.
Yay! Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. And if we are lucky and blessed today, perhaps we will be joined by one of the kitties. I set up a chair behind the camera, so Pavlova, or Pavi as I call her, she was sort of loafed over there, kind of looking could there be some action for me? And then
Yeah.
Pinecone is over there on the chair. So they are here, but they might not be seen. So
Okay.
That's
Hopefully, when
amazing.
we bust out the overhead cam, because so we've talked before on our live streams about the heart of the cards, which is the person who is drawing cards from the deck and running the cards. Claire is going to be the heart of the cards today. She's got a secondary camera set up, and so I'm hoping at some point we see we're building a world, and then a cat who is larger than the world walks through and destroys it. I think that would
I
be
am
fantastic.
absolutely
Yeah.
here for the large cat in the world, and it's like you built a world, and then the like cat god, all in like the Galactus being eats the world. You know, I actually remember years ago when I was a consultant, and that's how Peter and I met back in the day. I used to consult for various different clients, but I had this client who was in finance, and this was like the start of the pandemic, so everyone's as anxious ridden, as like up, scared as you could possibly be, especially when it came to the big financial crash and everything's going down. And she's on TV a lot, kind of sharing the new, like the most important news, trying to keep people calm, trying to educating people on what to make next steps in the middle of a giant economic crash. And she's doing this interview, and it's very solemn. And then her cat, and this was like the early days when people were trying to figure out how to do virtual interviews, and her cat just like meanders into frame in the camera, and she's trying to keep a serious face while putting her hand and trying to smoosh her cat. And you can see her like hold, like you can see her cracking, and she's trying to keep all of that together. So that's my memory of the invasive cat. But I think today, if it's Pinecone or Pavlova, I think it will be from a more lighthearted perspective, even if they are destroying worlds. But before we jump into asking you all the questions I know Peter and I have created for you, and I'm sure our audience has questions for you too, Claire. So chat, you guys have questions, please throw them into the chat room. Eric's going to be monitoring, and we will be asking those questions at the end of our interview session. If Peter hasn't mentioned it yet, usually our workshop series are a little bit different than our typical live streams that we've done in the past. I know in the past, we kind of do a lot of loose Q&A. We sometimes dive into world building. We build some lots of things. In this one, we are going to be building on the latter half of the live stream, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We will be playing with our decks today, but we obviously want to get a chance to know Claire. We want Claire to share all her expertise with us. So if you have all your burning questions on, solo RPGing, being a writer, being a fiddler, please throw it in the chat. But before we get into the meat of the conversation, you have to tell me why Pinecone and Pavlova, because those names are inspired.
Yeah, those are great names.
Thank you. So I started with Pavlova. Now, okay, this is some really deep cut, not lore, but I don't know. Okay, does anybody remember or know there was a cartoon movie that was made in 1988? It was an animated version of the Nutcracker. It was voiced by Canadian favorites Megan Follows and Kiefer Sutherland. And there's some other names in there as well who I don't know if they're Canadian, but it's this very old cartoon, and in it, Clara has a cat named Pavlova. And so this short little animated movie, very formative for me. I love the Nutcracker, and not just because the main character's name is Clara and my name is Claire. Similarities, yes. But I love the Nutcracker, and I love that version. It's so beautiful. And with the cat being called Pavlova, I always knew when I got a cat again, it would be Pavlova. And then my husband was like, well, we have to come up with a companion name for Pavlova because we are getting two, because you have to get two, because they have to play with each other and love each other. So we ran through some different P names, and he really liked Pinecone. It was very playful, and it just kind of stuck. So Pinecone and Pavlova together
They're
forever.
so perfectly complementary yet so different at the same time. If you think about it, I don't think a Pinecone has anything to do with a Pavlova, but yet they both have equal adorable factors when it comes to cats. Well, I appreciate that muchly, and I also just feel like it is such a writer thing to have at least one deep cut title. It's like it would have been just like a cute dessert, but really, there's like this massive like reference to this.
It's a writer thing to have one extremely deep cut title with lots of personal significance, and one that we just kind of came up with because we like the sound of it.
Yeah.
I also looking at I like how you found a clip, Peter. But
it instantly triggered a childhood memory of I didn't have cable growing up. We had very little TV to watch, but my parents had taped this off of TV on VHS, so it was one of like 5 movies we had. And I'd completely forgotten about its existence until just now. So thank you for this. So I had to confirm this is not a hallucination of my mind. This is great. I'm glad we figured
the rest of the cast includes Phyllis Diller as the Mouse Queen and Peter O'Toole as Pantaloon.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good.
I also feel like this cat, like this particular style of cat, existed in multiple animated films. It's almost like that whole like it's not the same actor, but the same animated cat moves from film to film. I could see it in their world where everyone's like, it's like if someone drew a cartoon that's like, and this cat, it's like the Wilhelm scream. It's like it moves. It's like this cat, it moves. Yeah. Okay, well. I'm not going to find a good segue into everything other than the fact that we clearly have well established that you are a very talented writer and you love watching deep cut films, but going into the land of solo RPGs, this is something that is extremely new to me and something that I probably have only deep dived in the last while, mostly because of Peter bringing it up. So for all of us out there, what in the heck is a solo RPG? Like, what is it? What drew you to the genre? And, you know, like, what draws writers like yourselves to solo RPGs? And why do you think it is appealing to possibly non-writers?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I was trying to think of like what's the simplest definition of solo RPG. I guess like the simplest would be it's an RPG that you play by yourself. But it's kind of more than that too. It's taking any kind of RPG role-playing game tool, something with a bunch of tables on it, and using dice, cards, tarot cards, pens and paper to create a story or a piece of a story in your mind. And that's kind of a nebulous definition, but it's the best that I can kind of think of and come up with. And I think that solo RPG can encompass a couple of different activities, whether it is like drawing the story engine cards and like quickly creating like a character in a world, or using like any other RPG tool that is like meant for groups, and then kind of building a story with it yourself. As for what drew me to solo RPG, I was actually doing solo RPG before I even knew like what the word or concept was. Okay, so another somewhat deep cut maybe time. So I don't know if anybody remembers the Scholastic book fairs here in Canada. They would
yeah. I'm pretty sure all of us who are like in Canada who are writers or readers or nerds just could not wait for it to come, and then we would go and beg our parents to buy us yet another thing.
It was always so much fun. There was those, and there was also the like book magazine or the ordering that we got once a month. There was those too. So through one or both of those things, I ended up getting signed up for a monthly. It was just when The Phantom Menace had come out. And they were doing all this promotion, and they started making these game books of like different Star Wars stories set in kind of that time period of episode 1. And they were game books. And every month you got new character cards of like some Star Wars characters, but also some like other made up Star Wars characters. Non-canon, I guess. And then every month you got a little book, and it was like kind of a choose your own adventure type game book where you would read the story, and then there would be choices, and there's some light combat. And so whenever those would come, I would get so excited and I would hole up in my room by myself and play my little adventure because I love Star Wars. I would play my little adventure and it would be so enriching and satisfying for me to do that. It was like my own private Star Wars story that I got to have between me and the book in my mind. So it was like the first time I did solo RPG unknowingly. And then much later, I don't know how I found microscope. I think it was just one of those moments where you just have this feeling inside and you're like, I gotta follow this feeling. And I just ended up on, that sounds very magical, but I ended up on the website. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I've never seen anything like this before. I have to buy this and like explore it. So I explored microscope, and then it turned out one of my friends also knew what that was, and we played a bit together. My friend Chadwick Ginther, who's a Winnipeg author. And then I think it was just before the pandemic or maybe during the pandemic, I started being like, there's no one to play with this with me right now. I'm going to like play this with myself. So I started like building a world with myself and using dice and Wikipedia prompts and like all these different sources to sort of build this very complex mermaid world. And I was like, oh, okay, like, is this like a thing that I'm doing? Like, do other people know this thing? And I was trying to like find, I guess, community and trying to like find out what it was called. Because really, like, once you put a name to something, it gains power. And so once I was like, just kind of searching, like, can you do tabletop and stuff by yourself? And then I stumbled upon the solo RPG Reddit community. And then I was like, oh, like this has a name. This is a thing that people do. I'm not kind of weird for doing it. So it just kind of went from there. And especially like after the pandemic, I really got into it. Drawing cards and using all of these different tools that I kind of collected, being kind of a tabletop wannabe, but never really having the community or never really wanting to like go out there and be like, hey, do you want to do this type of thing? Just enjoying that kind of solo experience. I'd collected different resources and I just kind of built from there. And now we're here.
And it's been very cool to see, particularly on your YouTube channel, which we'll actually put up on the screen here for a sec. You can subscribe to Clare's YouTube at youtube.com/c/Clare Marshall. You've made a lot of very cool videos where you kind of showcase a combination of different creative tools that you use. It sounds like both for like fun and imaginative play, and then also that you've used as kind of writer fuel or writing fuel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know just from the videos I've seen in your channel, I've seen you look at different prompting system and cards, different role play systems, collaborative world building tools, collaborative storytelling tools, solo RPGs, tarot cards. So specifically, how do solo RPGs kind of fit into your toolbox and your creative practices as a writer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So couple different ways. Sometimes I go to the tools to solve a specific problem, and other times I'm going to the tools to kind of refresh me and give me energy. So if I'm going to the tools to solve a specific problem, usually it's something extremely specific, like I don't like writing fight scenes, so I'm going to use something like Ironsworn, which I love, which I haven't done on the channel yet, and I really want to, but it's a great solo first system. It's very easy to quickly assign stats to everybody, and then I can make a fight scene not only more dynamic as a fight scene, but also I enjoy writing it that way. I'm not just like somebody punches another person and then one person loses. It's like there's actually, you can kind of move the pieces in your mind around the board in a way that I struggled to do just with me writing on a keyboard. So something like that is great. The other reason I go to the tools, like I said, is for creative refreshment, to gain back energy that I have lost spending elsewhere. And I find on days when I just don't have the same amount of energy, taking 20 minutes, sometimes an hour, depending on the day, and just sitting down and doing what I call creating without consequence. So I'm just going to create a story. It's not for anyone or for anything. It is purely for my own enjoyment, because I think when you are a professional writer or you are creating and you have an audience, there's kind of that pressure to like create, produce. But it's really nice to just create something that is for yourself, and creating that space and time to do that is really important and is actually part of the creative process. So I would sit down with, the story engine deck and all of its associated cards or anything from my toolbox, and I would just start like building. And then I don't know like what kind of the magic is there, but by the end of the 20 minutes or the hour, however long, I'm always like buzzing with an energy. And I think some of it too is just like dampening those voices inside that are like, oh, you can't do this, or you're not a good creator. And it's just like, well, I just spent the last 25 minutes making a really cool world. So yeah, that's kind of why and how I go to the tools.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said.
I find it. So there was a couple of things. I know earlier in the conversation you were sort of saying how, it took you a long time to kind of find out that there was like a community of people who did solo RPGs, and you said, but I think that kind of, it's almost like, well, of course, why would we look for a community? Because the whole point is solo RPGing. And I know for me, there's like as a super introvert, I think there's a lot of times where I want to do something creative that recharges my battery, but doesn't necessarily want to involve like trying to corral, 6 busy humans into a room together to play for many hours. So the other thing you sort of mentioned was the time element, 20 minutes to an hour. I don't think anyone of us ever talks about a D&D RPG campaign and being like, yeah, we just play for like 20 minutes a day and then we move on, right? It's like a huge commitment. Usually I find that I don't think I've known any friends in my life who has done a D&D session that wasn't 4 hours minimum, right?
Yeah, I've pulled off a 3-hour session, but that is hard, and you feel the hour you're missing.
The 20-minute session is like the modern equivalent of playing chess by mail.
Yeah, truly.
I feel like the 20-minute D&D session is just everyone sits down together and they all like organize and lay out their things, and then they all get up and leave again.
I need 20 minutes to pick my dice. So.
Yeah. But I think like maybe that kind of leads into the next question, because that's the other thing you mentioned was creating, sometimes like a story for yourself as opposed to a story that is designated for the world. Like, do you find that the kind of storytelling or world building you do in a solo RPG different than what you do when you're writing? Like, do you find that there's choices you might make if you're just like a player in the game that might be different than if you're approaching it from the eyes of a writer?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess I approach my personal play kind of like how you would approach an open world game on the computer, except you have even more freedom, because in an open world, say like Skyrim, you're wandering around the forests and the different castles and different areas, and you can kind of go like wherever you want. If you can go do a quest, and sometimes you're locked into, finishing a dungeon or exploring a cave or whatever, but sometimes you're not, and you can just leave and go explore a different cave or go to a town, and the people are waiting there for you to accept their quests and all that. So in a like a solo RPG, it's much the same. Like, I can go explore a castle if I want, and if I don't like what's happening in there, I can just be like, bye, and walk into the forest and experience something else. With writing, novels are linear. So you have a protagonist who is trying to do a thing for some reason, and you kind of have to follow her until she reaches her natural end. If she decides, while she's exploring a castle, if she was like, I don't really like this, I'm going to go do this whole other story like over here, I think the person who would also be leaving is the reader, because they're going to be like, wait, why is she going? Why is this story suddenly about something else? So I they're very different in that respect.
Yeah, do you feel like sometimes you like have to, if you're approaching it from a writer, then you're almost like, well, I wish I could leave this castle, but I guess that's just what we're gonna do now.
I think it's, maybe that's a signal then for you to reevaluate why we're in this castle and how can we improve the story? How can we add more tension? How can we add more elements that relate to the character or the reader? Yeah, it's just a sign.
Yeah, and I would almost liken the comparison to like the storytelling choices you make for free play versus the storytelling choices you make to tell a story to an audience is like be the difference between going and seeing a theater troupe do their like warm up improv games versus going to see them put on their play. Like I think there's value, and I think that's kind of almost what solo RPGs can be sometimes, is like doing like an improv what if exercise or an improv game by yourself. Where some of the prompts or the things that you're building your feedback on are coming from, you know, some kind of, I think it's usually called the oracle, or often it's called the oracle, is some kind of thing that is outside you that is giving you notes on the story. And, you know, most of us would not want to watch a theater troupe warm ups. Some of us would. I actually love watching backstage creative process stuff, but yeah. Definitely different things. But yeah, so I guess specifically for a writer who wants to take solo RPGs kind of into their practice, what would you recommend their relationship to solo RPGs being? Like, is this something where their storytelling brain is just meant to like kind of harvest interesting moments from their play? Would you recommend they try it as a prompting tool? Is it more of a journaling thing? What are some ways, I guess, that writers could find their way into using solo RPGs in their practice?
Yeah. I guess there's a couple different ways you can approach it. I guess like the first thing I would say is try not to put any pressure on yourself to like get anything out of the session. Just approach it with kind of a blank, curious mind, and to be like, okay, I would like to get something out of this for a story, but you know what? If I don't, that's okay too. I'm just here to kind of create and maybe warm up a little bit. You know, using something like the story engine cards to quickly make a character is really easy. Or there are other tools on, say, like Drive-Thru RPG, which sells like PDFs and some of them are really cheap or pay what you want. Tools like Une allows you to like quickly make characters by basically rolling on a adjective and noun list and putting that together, and you suddenly have a new character. There's Bold as well, Book of Legends and Deeds. And again, Une and Bold are pay what you want, I believe still. Bold helps you make a nonsense sentence that you can interpret to create a story. And I also think there's an app you can download that has different, I forget what it's called, like Adventure Crafter. It has Une and Bold and some other tools on it as well. So you can like press a button and it'll create it for you. And I was doing that during different like waiting for doctor's appointments. I would like open the app and it would create a bold prompt, just like a nonsense sentence, and I would just keep pressing it and be like, oh, like that's making that little story. Oh, that's interesting. Next. So instead of like doom scrolling on like Reddit, I'm like creating little stories while I wait. So that was like kind of fun and interesting. And sometimes it makes you think about a different thing later that could be useful for storytelling. Yeah, I guess in summary, like don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to be like, oh, I got to use this to create something. Like just like pick a tool that you think is easy to use or that you enjoy using. And when you either have a problem that you're trying to solve, or when you just have a minute and you're just like, oh, I kind of feel like a bit creative, but I'm waiting in line at the grocery store and I kind of want to do something, like pick something that's easy for you to activate your brain in this way and just do it.
I feel like telling writers or creatives to put less pressure on themselves is like, I don't know, trying to tell the earth to stop moving or something, but we can keep trying. We can keep trying to tell writers to stop putting pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
I'm saying it as much to myself as I am to you. Like, believe me. I put a lot of pressure on myself.
I will say, if you do want a chance to kind of see some of these tools at play and in use, again, Claire's channel is a great place to check that out. I think you just did a video that included bold in it, correct?
Yes. There's a couple of videos where I use bold. I have a video where I explain bold because it's kind of hard to explain, and it's not very interesting for me to sit here and be like, and then you roll in this table, and then you roll in this table. But I kind of have a video where I explain that, and it's once you know how to use it, you're just like, oh, and it's very quick to use.
Yeah. I feel like I would get a lot of satisfaction just from hitting the button and seeing creative things come up. I feel like so I've been getting back into working on my music, so that's kind of been my creative project over the last couple of years, and not done as much with it as I could because life and busyness and story engine. But all that is to say, and like that's the pressure I put on myself, and I feel like punching out random like song lyrics is like the queen and kings of random sentences. You know, half the time the whole chorus is just why, and then like some nonsensical, like, I don't know, lyrical sentence that you're hoping someone will take and be like, that's a metaphor for the crumbling of society, or that's a metaphor to seek like greater healing within yourself, but it's like a completely nonsensical sentence. So I feel like I would get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So I know you mentioned tools, and maybe this kind of almost a similar question, but not quite a similar question, because you mentioned a few apps and tools that people use. Do you find that there's any solo RPG specific writing exercise that like a writer could try to use?
Like a specific exercise. I guess all of the exercises that I use are literally just from the point of view of discovering. So I'm literally just sitting down with cards or picking a tool and playing with it. So no like step 1, step 2, step 3 exercises. But something that you can do, like, I don't know if you have access, like you kind of have to have access to the specific tools or seek them out versus kind of the first, I guess, step. But if you have like tarot cards, what you could do is draw 3 tarot cards, and that could represent like the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story, or maybe somebody's backstory, and what they are facing currently is the present, and then what will happen is the future. I know there are, and I don't do like a lot of journaling solo RPG because it is more like I still write when I'm solo RPGing, but I find the solo RPG journaling to be a little bit more nebulous, and I'm not always quite in the mood for that. But there are different more journal heavy solo tools and games that you can go to if you feel like more of a writing exercise. Like I did a Journey on my channel, which is kind of a cozy exploring a new world with a character, and it's just like very calm and peaceful and something you curl up with a little cup of tea with. So if you search any like solo RPG journaling, that will be more like writing intensive, and that might fill that if you're looking for something that is like specifically I want to like write something. But yeah,
cool.
Can you actually expand on the journaling element? Like when you have a journal in a solo RPG, like what does it do?
Yeah, so
are they basically are they like saying like, okay, you went on this journey, now reflect on it, or something, like basically challenging you with additional prompts to do more work?
Yes, a lot of journaling, solo RPG journaling games and tools are more reflective. So they usually will have a series of questions. So like, you just explored this land, and what did that make you feel? And you want to expand on that with your feelings. And I mean, when it says journal, it's just, you don't have to write it by hand. It can be like on the computer or any Word document. And I will also say that like when I'm doing like regular solo RPG in my personal play, I'm still writing that. So you could say that that is also journaling. And I think that is kind of a topic of not really debate, but discussion in the solo RPG world. Like, are people authoring or non-authoring their sessions? And, you know, when is it you're just writing? Well, to me, it's the writing is just the output of what I'm doing. So I am, no matter what I'm doing, if it's a specific journaling game, or I am like doing a solo RPG, like there's characters and they're getting in fights and there's like tactics and dice rolling and all of that, I'm still writing it out in my Word document. That's just because talking it out loud, I'm a better writer than I am a talker. So writing it makes it feel more real to me. And I also don't want it just to exist in my head. I want to like keep it for later so that I can go back to it and be like, oh, remember that fight that I had? That was really cool. So I think both and all are valid ways to play.
Mhm.
I was watching an old Kendrick Lamar interview, and he was talking about his writing process, and how he like takes his journal with him everywhere. He like notoriously did a really fantastic. The closing song on his latest album is like an ode to his pen, but you don't find that out until literally the last line. It sounds like he's having this very tempestuous relationship with a romantic relationship with someone, and at the end it's kind of the gotcha. So it's a fun song, and he's talked about in his writing process like the importance of like he journals so much. He'll take the notebook with him when he travels, and he's kind of collecting these moments where he pays attention to how he's feeling or what he's feeling and why it's strong. And that's so that later, 6 months later, when he's like, the last time I felt like this was in that moment, I can go back and figure out what happened. What was it about, like, I don't know, meeting a kid on the street that he ended up having a chat with that like made him feel that way, and go and access those emotions and access the details that made that moment possible. And I feel like solo RPG is not one way to build that library of experiences that you want to draw on that attach different feelings, images, and details, without actually being out in the world all the time. Like I think for writers, like being out in the world is a very important thing to do. I think like lived experience is such a great place to source ingredients for your writing. But you have a chance to go places that you can't normally go and experience things you can't normally experience in solo play. And again, writing it down, being able to go back to the notebook where you know you jotted it down, so you can like remind yourself what it felt like to be in that combat, or like how cool it felt to pull off that maneuver. You've got access to whatever the nugget was that caused that feeling, and you can use that in a whole new context that might not even be related to how it first came up. So very cool.
My biggest issue is that most of my ideas come when I'm driving, of which writing is. See, I tried that. But see, technically, I shouldn't really be pulling a recorder out to try and record my voice when I'm driving either. And it's funny because I did try to do that once upon a time. And I'm sure sound recording is better than USB. But I remember for a while I was using like my BlackBerry. And, you know, I'm driving on the highway. And what would end up being recorded is usually like, myself. And it would just like be these like horrific recordings. And I was like, wow, that was not usable. The other issue is then it also requires me to remember that I recorded the thing. I am notorious for journaling things and then they just vanish into like a dark corner that I never see again. Because like it's like if it's not in the journal, like I have like a songwriting, like a lyric book, but I don't always carry that one around. Is that I jot it in this other notebook and then it just like vanished into the void of paper. And I'm just like, oh no. So one thing I've been trying to actually get more back into is just handwriting journaling, very analog style, because I do find that there's like something about my engineer brain that turns on once I see a piece of like a document that I can't brainstorm as effectively. Back when I used to do my English, like when I was doing my English lit degree and I wrote essays, I actually hand wrote all my essays because then I could feel like I could circle a block and point an arrow to it and move it around. Whereas I felt so constricted to feeling like I need to deliver that linear, perfect piece when typing. And I do find that my vocabulary strangely expands when I'm handwriting. By the way, I've also learned that my handwriting has degenerated horrifically in the last few years.
Mine too. Yeah. Mine's chicken scratch for sure.
But I have found that now as I'm starting to write into a notebook more, I've needed to really start using little Post-it notes and bookmarks because otherwise it will all be lost in the void of writing.
Absolutely.
Because I'll write it and then I'll be like, oh shite, like I actually did write it. Like I actually literally had a thing where I wrote it, I was doing it on a plane. I tend to do it a lot on like plane rides now. And weeks later I was like, dang, I need to like write this post about this thing I had all this commentary on, and I thought I didn't write it yet. And then I think I was flipping through my notebook and I was like, oh my God, I actually wrote most of it. I was like, okay, we're like little cookies in here.
So for things like that, I found for me, systematizing that process is very helpful. So now that I carry my phone everywhere, I never used to be like that. I never used to be a person who like carried her phone everywhere. I will use Google Keep, where I put all of my like little ideas. And then every once in a while, I'll pull those notes into, I use Obsidian, which is a free app, and it's kind of like a fancy notebook where you can kind of link all your different notes and ideas. And so then I'll kind of organize everything, and I have a daily note where I'm writing down like all of my different, that's where I kind of draft all of my social posts, and like just any like journal-y thoughts or just anything goes in there. But also any scripts and kind of novel ideas are all kind of categorized, especially. So now when I'm like, oh, I need to write a social post, or I need to like send a form email, I'm like, or when I'm like, what's the hex code for like my brand colors? Then I'm like, oh, okay, I have that bookmarked here, and I can just go like click, click, copy, paste, like, because I also know the feeling of like, I know I've done this before, I know I've written down this idea before, but like, where did I put it? So yeah, it all goes in Obsidian.
Nice. Yeah. I'm a Notion guy over here, and also I have a complex system of Google Sheets that I'm asking to do things that no Google Sheet should be asked to do, organizationally. But yeah, no, it's definitely good to have some kind of system to be able to go back to it and figure out where the thing was. But speaking of sort of writing and journaling, I think we're about to try an experiment that is probably a little bit unusual, which is we're going to try and play a solo RPG as a group. Or rather, Claire is going to lead us through.
Literally defying solo RPG.
Something wrong with that sentence.
Yeah. But I think we will mostly be spectators here, but we'll be asking questions. And again, if you have any questions about what Claire is doing, how this works, questions that you want to go, like even if it's going back to stuff we discussed earlier, you can always drop that in the chat. We'll keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, I think what we're going to do is bring out Claire's Heart of the Cards camera. And we will start doing a little bit of solo RPG play live right now. So
I also will say, I know some people were sharing some of the systems that they were using. If you guys have your own solo RPGs and ideas and like kind of sharing your experiences solo RPGing, we'd love to hear them and share them in the chat as well, because I think, as Claire seemed to allude to, there's a lot of different ways to solo RPG, and you know, some ways work better for others. Like I'd be curious to know if other people have done journal RPGs and prefer them, or if you guys prefer your, you know, kind of like just creating your own way. I know for me, when I hear what was described about being prompted, I think I would like a prompt of a journal RPG. But that's probably because I'm a daydreamer. So if you don't tell me, I'd probably just be a spectator in my own RPG, and I'd just be like, yay, that was fun.
I think that's valid, because even improv artists, like, they need something to like start them off. So I think that's very valid, for like needing some kind of prompt or area to start. So what I was thinking of doing, and Peter and Roki, if you could tell me if you don't want to do this, or if you do want to do this, this is cool. I had this idea for a novel, and I had it like maybe a month or so ago, and it's just an idea. Like, I haven't developed it at all. It's like this Snow White retelling. All I know about this idea is this Snow White character goes to live with a mysterious family who she's betrothed to the prince of that family. And one night she sees the sister of her betrothed go up to a beautiful mirror. She says something to the mirror, and the sister disappears through the mirror into like another world. So I thought it would be kind of interesting in our chats about like using tools to kind of expand worlds or expand ideas, if we could take kind of this like nugget of a story idea and try and like expand, because I have not done anything to this idea. Like, it's just an idea. I don't know anything about this world. I don't know anything about this Snow White, the sister, this betrothed person, like this other world. I don't know anything about it. And I've been meaning to sit down with the cards and other tools that I have to explore it. So is it okay?
I feel like that's perfect, because as you saw from this comment from Onyx Page is saying that they bought several of the cards, they don't really use them because they don't play RPGs and I'm a new writer. So this is like the perfect opportunity to show that's like, I have the seed of an idea.
Yeah.
But I don't quite know how to use the different tools and resources at my disposal to flesh out this idea. And you're about to show literally what's going to happen. And I actually see it. I see that you have Story Engine deck and Deck of Worlds out. And if I squint, I see what might be the Deities card from the Lore Masters deck off in the corner over there too. So
yeah, so you can't really quite see because my camera's not big enough, but I have all of the cards. They're all here. And the Lore Masters deck is just over here out of view. I tried to arrange them by color in like kind of a rainbow gradient. It sort of worked. So
I love this. I love that I have learned yet another way of how people organize and display their cards. One of the things that excites me the most is when people show and tell how they choose to organize their cards. We have seen so many crazy storage systems, but color through colors is a new one for me, but it's also very pretty. And I like it. I am absolutely here for the color coded organization aesthetic. For those of you who hasn't seen all our decks yet, we have the Story Engine deck, and it's many expansions and boosters. Story Engine deck is for building character-based prompts. And then Deck of Worlds is our second deck, and it's for world building. And then, of course, Lore Masters deck, which is our newest deck that we finished fulfilling crowdfunding for just maybe like a few weeks ago at this point, and it's just gone live on our website, is our deck of weaving all the lore things together. If you want to build these like big, fleshy, meaty, like worlds and stories and universes just full of factions and, getting granular into the materials, so on and so forth. So I don't know. Without further ado, Claire, I think we just need to dive into the story.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so whenever I'm approaching fleshing out a story, what I do is I start with the character, because the character will inform the world, and having a kind of anchor just helps you like focus in and narrow in. So I'm going to create a character here to start. I don't know who this character is going to be. Maybe it will actually turn out to be the sister or the betrothed. We're just going to create it, and then we're going to kind of just go from there. So I'm going to draw an agent card. Okay, and you can see that here. It says a misfit, a demon, a monster, and a genius. So the things that they're all speaking to me. A monster or a demon is interesting. It could be something that when the sister goes through the portal, maybe it's something that she's fighting over there. Maybe it speaks to the villain, or maybe one of the henchmen that is there. A misfit is also interesting. It could be the sister herself. It could be an ally. So as you're like looking at a prompt like this, you're going to get all these like ideas. And I think it's okay and totally normal to just, say your ideas out loud like I'm doing, or to write them down like as they're coming to you, and just kind of like take them and be like, oh, that's very interesting. I'm going to put that just over here, and I'm going to put that just over here. And maybe it'll solidify, but maybe it won't. And just kind of accept that, like, I don't know who this person is yet in this world, but that's okay. We're going to keep discovering together who this could be. I kind of like Misfit. Let's go with Misfit. Who is this Misfit? What is their personality like? So I'm going to draw an aspect card, which is down here. And on the aspect card, we have sinking, fearful, demonic, and doubtful. So good thing we could go say a demonic
demon. Really doubling down.
Very redundant. And this is from the horror expansion pack. I have all of them. I just mix them all together because I like all the different flavors together. So a fearful misfit, a sinking misfit is interesting. I immediately think of like quicksand. Somebody is trapped in quicksand. That's something that as a kid you were always worried about, quicksand, and then you find out that it's not like a real problem that most people have. Okay, that's interesting. So when a card doesn't like immediately grab me, I'll kind of put it like off to the side over here because it could come back later. I could be like, oh, actually, fearful does make sense. But
I like that you don't just get rid of the card, because I know, we say there's no rules and people can truly just exchange a card if they don't like it. But I think Peter and I and Eric have often challenged folks to try and hang on to it and just try and see if you can find a connection. So the idea that you can kind of that you set it aside and that it may come back later is an interesting choice.
It's like setting aside part of your snack for later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want a pickle right now, but I will want a pickle in 5 minutes. I know me. I'm fickle on pickles.
I can if I eat the whole piece of cake now, but if I eat half of it later, then it's okay.
Peter, I feel like the pickle reference was to that one time when we were in Halifax and there was that pickle that was left behind for... Am I calling you out? Am I throwing you under the bus for the pickle incident?
No. So I just kept... I got... My wife doesn't eat pickles, and I love pickles, and they can add a pickle and chips for $2 at Luke's on Agricola. Best sandwiches in Halifax, in my opinion. So I always get the pickles and chips add-on for both of us, but I asked them to put her pickle outside the box because I want the pickle, and I just want the pickle to go to waste. And yeah, I will, as Marlene says, I will want a pickle within a few minutes. I'm talking myself into wanting a pickle a lot. All this to say, the second pickle doesn't have a place to live, and I forget about it. And then I kept forgetting to eat it. And I think it was on the day that we were doing the live stream, where we're doing the in-person live stream that kicked off the workshop series. So I just kept leaving this pickle around different parts of the house. And I think I didn't eat it for like 6 hours or something.
I think you also went off and fenced. I think, and the reason why I remember this is because I was eyeing this. So I'm a super organizer. Despite all the things I said about my chicken scratchings and journaling, I'm actually a hyper organized person, which is why I used to be a producer. And I was eyeing this pickle, and I just kept being like, if Peter doesn't eat this pickle, I want this pickle. And I'm just like trying to find opportunity to be like, do you want this pickle? Because I'm like watching it. I'm like, at some point, this pickle is going to stop being attractive to eat. So I want to keep bringing this up while the pickle is still attractive. Anyways, pickles.
Now you're making me want a pickle. I haven't had a pickle in a while. And my husband and I definitely do have a joke where like, oh, let's get pickles. And are you hungry? Just have a pickle. Just have a pickle.
Anyway, we're gonna actually...
We have people now deeply invested in the pickle story, but we're going to move on.
I can bring it back. Hold on. I got this. I got the transition. We are actually going to, much like one would brine a cucumber, age this prompt that we're not using, putting it off to the side, letting it brine, letting it pickle, and then it's there, and we'll have that extra flavor from the aging process when we want it later.
Wow.
That's right. Very
and
good.
Also the aspect card is green, like a pickle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking too.
All right, so we're pulling another aspect card then?
We are pulling another aspect card. I tend to pull at least two for a character. So we have fickle, we have mighty, we have innovative, and we have hated. All of these are kind of speaking to me. I like the idea of an innovative misfit. It kind of makes me think of like an inventor, kind of like in like the Disney animated Beauty and the Beast, like Belle's father, kind of an eccentric inventor. A fickle pickle, yes, exactly. I'm going to put innovative here. I also don't know, I'm getting a sense that maybe this misfit is from this other world, and I don't know anything about this other world. Like it could be like another fantasy type world, or it could be like a sci-fi world, or something like steampunk esque, like a totally different technology level from this fantasy world. And maybe the family that she's betrothed to is tasked with protecting this kind of portal mirror and preventing people from stepping into other worlds and like taking their technology into the fantasy world for themselves or invading other worlds. So there's something here with like innovative misfits inventing. I'm going to draw another aspect card because we want to learn a little bit more about our innovative misfit. Okay, so we have fascinating, we have impulsive, which is very interesting, elusive, and burning. Burning is interesting. I'm kind of getting a flash of like maybe like I'm picturing the Snow White character eventually follows the sister into whatever world. Like maybe when we meet this misfit, maybe they're on fire, or like there's an accident in this misfit's lab, and whether the sister knows this misfit, maybe they're a contact there, and they happen to come into the workshop where they are, and they've just exploded something, and they're kind of on fire and running around, being like and I have to put myself out. So maybe burning for that. Okay, so we have a character. We know a little bit, kind of a taste about them. So now we're going to move to the engine cards, which are the engine of the character. What do they want in the world? So I'm going to draw this. And they're two-sided here. So wants to stop being haunted by, or wants to hide an obsession with. Wants to stop being haunted by is kind of interesting. Like, is there a ghost in the workshop if we're taking it literally, or is there something in their past that is gnawing at them? That is interesting. I'm going to put this over here because nothing hugely big there, but maybe we can use the haunted by as sort of an internal motivation for this character. So we're going to decide.
I'd like to nominate that. I've been calling that area often when I play with the decks the sideboard.
Yes.
But I'm going to start calling it the pickle shelf. It's just where you put things to age and to brine up, and you'll really find the flavor when you come back to it.
Yes. And actually, now that like I've sat this here, doubtful and wants to stop being haunted by could work really well together. So if we go with this idea that maybe this inventor is sort of has this internal grief, or there's something that is haunting them, maybe it's causing them doubt. So we could kind of work that into that as well, depending on what else comes up here. But yeah, the pickle shelf does age the prompts, ages them well. Okay, so another engine card here. Wants to find hope in or for. Wants to bring despair to or with. Oh, that's very interesting. I again, and you're always going to be influenced by your own kind of deep cut references, right? So like I said, Beauty and the Beast, inventor. So to me, the despair doesn't catch me, but the hope catches me more. Like I see this more at this person as like an ally, someone that's going to tell us about this other world, that's going to help the sister, help the Snow White character, and be kind of the gateway to whatever problem is going on. So maybe the finding the hope in or for has to do with, whatever large world problem is happening. I think this person sees the sister, the Snow White character, as the chosen ones, the hope. They are the hope. Now, regardless of what the hope for in is, sometimes I do draw an anchor card, even if it's a person and I've already established a person. Oh, did my camera freeze? Oh, there we go. Even if I know what that is, I'll draw a card anyway, just because you never know what's gonna come up and what's going to add flavor. And if it doesn't work, then you can just put it on the pickle shelf like we've already done. So I'm going to draw an anchor. Woo, we got a grave, a church, a puzzle, and a flower. Now, obviously, the flower and Beauty and the Beast, like that's kind of the first thing that I think of, because that's already exists in the world, but we're doing Snow White, not Beauty and the Beast. A puzzle is interesting because they're an inventor. So maybe there's maybe the sister and Snow White, they have to go to the workshop to pick up some kind of clue or a piece of whatever MacGuffin that they are doing. Somebody says, I'm curious what you see as the connection to Snow White in this story concept. I guess bringing it back to in my mind, when I first thought of this idea, I was in the library section or in the young adult section of the library, and I was looking at different fairy tale retellings. And I don't know, I think I saw an apple or something. Snow White popped in my head. And in my mind, I see her as like wearing different furs. I don't know exactly, I can't exactly explain to you the full like Snow White connection, but also the mirror is part of the connection.
I also wonder if like it's like obviously you mentioned that Snow White is inspiring the story, but maybe by the time it's fully finished, it is not a Snow White retelling at all, and it's its own unique tale. I think a lot of us draw inspiration from all sorts of things that already exist in the world, right? As like I think it's T.S. Eliot and Picasso both said before, it's like bad artists plagiarize, good artists steal. It's like I think most things have been done in the world at this point. So sometimes it's just seeing the thing, right? As you said, like you saw, like for you, it's the mirror, but you know, like the mirror portal exists in I guess Snow White was never a portal, but the mirror exists in Snow White. Yeah. But the mirror portal has certainly existed as a fantasy or even horror concept across the ages. So you're pulling it from like the Snow White story, but your story could be very uniquely your own when this is all finished.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point. And also, like, we are really at the beginning of exploring this as well. If I really wanted to make it root it more in the Snow White story, I could also start exploring the themes of Snow White, which is jealousy, love, beauty. Jealousy and beauty are really like the two prime areas there. Otherwise we're still
exploring. It's not about being a traditional like housewife and learning how to clean after a bunch of men.
Maybe there's 7 puzzles that they have to solve.
I just say this because I actually was part of a Snow White pantomime when I lived in Northern Ireland. I was hired for this like children's pantomime Snow White retelling, but in this Snow White retelling, it was a feminist retelling. So in the story, like when Snow White sees the dwarves and they want her to clean, she's like, "I'm going to teach you how to clean and how to become more self-sufficient in your household." And then at the end, when the prince is like, "Woo, we're going to be married," she's like, "Hold on a minute, I only just met you once, and I don't even know who you are. So I think we should connect with each other, and I will decide whether we should end up pursuing a relationship." So that was just kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the story that you were in Northern Ireland doing a pantomime. That's like very cool. Okay, so we have a character. We have somewhat of an idea of what they want, what they're offering in the story. There's this kind of puzzle element. Maybe the sisters have to solve a puzzle, and the misfit is they are offering a piece of this puzzle. So the last step of the story engine is to draw a conflict. So what's kind of the wrench in the works that is potentially stopping this person from succeeding, or it could be stopping somebody else from succeeding. Let's see. Ooh, fantasy. But their greatest enemy will return, but they will burn out the last of their power.
Oh, those are both really interesting with what's on the table already.
I know.
If they're portal protectors, then the enemy returning is like beautiful. Like if the role is guarding the realm, that's such a great setup. But then again, we have a burning character, and there's with the idea of like hope burning and power burning out and powered energy for their inventive devices. Like there's a lot of different ways you could layer that. Both of those are really. I'm excited about both.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Either or both, because I mean, maybe they're trying to stop an enemy from returning through the portal, or the burning out the last of her power. I had this prompt the other day on something else I was doing, and I think it got me thinking about how we never really, or at least I had never thought about superheroes in the context of like having finite power. I've only really thought of superheroes having infinite power, and it's just like breathing and walking and flying is what they do. But like the fact that they might have some kind of finite power, I guess like their heart stops and then they die, is kind of very interesting. This idea that you can lose your power by doing something. So yeah, both of those are really, really interesting.
If we like wanted to do it Snow White coded, when I was thinking about like some enemy that will return, it could be almost like the post. It's like the post Snow White story. So it's like could be Evil Queen. It could be the face behind the mirror all this time, right? It's like maybe the face behind the mirror was actually like the big enemy of it all, because it's the one that kind of, you know, pitted these women against each other by spurring jealousy.
Yeah.
So I want to make a suggestion, and you can decline this if you want, because this is a solo RPG live stream. But normally we do ask the chat to vote for a prompt, and since it's a solo RPG, we're allowing obviously most of the process to be you to guide us through. But maybe for this one for one conflict card, since we all seem to like both options, we can ask the chat to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you could review the prompts for us one more time and pick one keyword from each prompt, and that'll be what people type in to vote. And then afterwards, count us down and say go, and that's when people can start voting, because we go first to three through.
Okay, so the two prompts were, but their greatest enemy will return. And the other prompt is, but they will burn out the last of their power. So for their greatest enemy will return, we could say return. And then for they will burn out the last of their power, we can say burn.
Cool.
And then count down from 3.
Yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Vote.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Maybe we surprise the chat. The chat's just like, wait, oh no, we gotta do this.
You've just been listening.
Yeah.
Oh, people
like
want to burn.
burn
That burn came so fast. They were.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, with Onyx, there was some caps lock business going on in here.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it.
Burn got it.
Cool. Burn wins.
Burn wins. And I'll just say too, if you're excited by both sides of a card, sometimes I'll just put it like this. The light does unfortunately mask it, but I'll just put it like this to kind of remind me maybe both things are at play here. So sometimes I just put it like that, just for the people who need to know.
It's a variant of the corner tech, which we've talked about in some previous live streams, where basically you activate both. The other thing that's very particularly interesting about conflict cards going sideways, sometimes when I don't want to choose, I will make the character choose. So those are both potential outcomes. And so they end up with a moment where they're faced with, I can do A and I burn out, or I can do B and enemy returns, and then that choice becomes really interesting. So every now and then you can kind of double dip.
Yes.
Yeah. So keep your eyes out for that opportunity.
I love that. Okay. So now we have a side, I'm going to go like a side character, an ally who exists in this other world. Now, you may think that you're at the end, but you're not, because now you can start using your curiosity to spur questions that will continue us on the exploration of this story world. So some of the questions I have from this are, what's this puzzle? What are these puzzle pieces that maybe the sister and Snow White are collecting? Like the chat kind of said, what does this have to do with Snow White? How can we bring more of that flavor into the story? What is this? Where is this workshop where they are? Where is that set? Like when the sister and Snow White step into the portal, like where are they and how close is this misfit to the portal? Do they just step out of the portal into the workshop? That would be very convenient for story purposes and perhaps very exciting. Just step out and then you see a burning man just like in front of you. That actually is kind of exciting. So I think what I'm going to do next, let's use the deck of worlds and kind of build out a little kind of area where the workshop is, so we can kind of explore, start spreading the tendrils of the story outward from this inventive misfit. So I will start. I mixed up all my cards here. Region is here. That's the only thing about sorting by color is you have to be like, wait, where did that card go? Where is it?
It's like, is a story engine? Is a deck of worlds? I don't know.
I don't know anymore. Okay, I'm going to draw a region card. Foothills. Very interesting. Turns out it's all in Calgary. The other world was Calgary the whole time.
Yeah, it takes place on Nose Hill.
Yes, I am in Calgary, by the way. Okay, so we got foothills. We'll go with that. Sometimes I get very choosy with my regions. I'm just like, nope, nope, nope. And with my landmarks too. We have a lookout and a school. School is kind of interesting. Does this inventor, maybe they're like a science teacher, maybe they're like maybe their workshop is actually the school and he's kind of there after hours, like using the equipment because he doesn't have it at home. Or maybe he lives in the school. Maybe it's like an abandoned school and he just kind of lives there now. It's his home. So we'll go with school. That's interesting.
The school has so much anime high school vibes. like you know, like there's so many settings in anime that's just like a high school and they're just always there. Like they're there before class starts, they're there after class. Like somehow they just all have access to all the different rooms and stuff. We don't know why, it just is.
It just is.
Just
is. That's right. Okay, let's go. I do these in either order, origin or attribute. Let's do origin. So we have origin of a widely used knot. This is from the coastal expansion. Assembled from derelict ships. Site of an infamous mutiny. Or a former missionary camp. Okay, those are all very interesting. They're all very like nautical and we're kind of in the foothills. Now, that's not to say that we can't use any of these, but I am going to put it on the pickle shelf for now. And let's try a different one. Ooh, now we're in space. Site where humans first landed. Interesting. Made with ancient technology. Okay. A site of an infamous experiment. I mean, kind of fits. And former launch site or airfield. Okay, all of these are very interesting. And I can kind of see us doing a bit of a corner tuck here. Site where humans first landed could point to like the portal opens up in the school. And like this is where the people from the fantasy world come to this little more techie world. And made with ancient technology obviously can point to the mirror, could point to anything that's in this workshop. And site of infamous experiment. Who knows what this misfit is getting up to? All of these really, really fit. So we'll do site where humans first landed and made with ancient technology. So we'll kind of do that in there. Okay. You can kind of see how like every card gives us like a little piece of information of what is kind of going around. And if you're kind of visual like me, you can kind of start seeing it springing up in your mind. So next we will draw an attribute card. Ooh, another sci-fi. Blend of alien and local customs, governed by AI, visible from space, and home of the last tree. That's interesting. Okay.
I forgot about that prompt. Yeah, that is. Yeah.
I think what's interesting about hearing some of these too is that even if especially if you are looking at writing science fiction, they could be very much coded towards science fiction, but they can also not be, depending on what genre you're sitting. Like Home of the Last Tree could be fantasy leaning. It can be genre agnostic. There's ways to make it fit in your story that doesn't always need to be hard coded in sci-fi as well.
It's like governed by an AI very much has like kind of coded for governed by the face in the mirror if you're doing Snow White.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
The face in the mirror is a Snapchat filter that became sentient.
We're all doomed.
Oh no. I love that. I love that. And the face.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm surprised no one's developed this yet, but once upon a time I remember thinking when I looked in mirrors, being like, how come we don't have like a good selfie camera in mirrors? Because I always feel like when I used to look in front of a mirror, I'd feel like I looked my best when I looked in the mirror and I could kind of figure out my best angles. And I'm like, I look decent. Then someone will take a photo of me later and I'll be like, that was terrible. Why? Why is this happening?
We just settled for holding up our phone and taking a picture of the mirror.
I know.
Yeah.
We're just not anywhere near the same at all.
Yeah.
There's your $1 billion idea.
I know.
Selfie mirrors.
Peter, moving on from the story engine, I'm going to develop
no.
a selfie mirror.
Oh no.
Oh gosh. Okay, let's go with I like that idea of the AI being the mirror, whatever force that might be. So let's go with that. I also do like the blend of alien and local customs as kind of there are other people other than humans in this world. Don't know what they are, but I like that idea a lot. So let's corner tuck that and do a complicated. And then I always get scared that I'm gonna like pick the ends with my fingernails when I'm doing this.
This is when you get the story engine playmat so you can have a softer, squishier surface.
But I use the playmat for the cards.
No, this is totally me doing the shameless story engine plug. It's like instead of picking things off the table, you can use the squishy mat.
Oh no, and now I've totally. Oh, okay. Did we?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, nice.
Oh, that's
Okay.
what happens when you play in advanced mode. It's just, that. So for folks who are newer to the deck, I know there was a couple of folks earlier who just sort of said they don't use the deck as frequently. We've obviously jumped into super duper advanced mode with this live stream, but if you're looking at ways, if you're just getting started with the deck and you're looking, we have so many tutorials all over our YouTube that you can check out ways that, like the ways we played with the deck, the ways we built certain prompts. In case, just in case that like this feels intimidating, we promise you like this, like what Claire's doing is so interesting and innovative. Even for me, honestly, watching how you choose to stack 2 aspect cards on an agent, like I don't think like that. I would say my engineer brain is very much like, follow the rule book. I'll do it exactly this way every time. So this is actually really really inspiring even for me. But obviously if you're new and you're wondering to yourself, wait, I don't get all this work. What am I doing? It's because we didn't really get a chance to, we're not just for this live stream today, we're kind of deep diving in right away. Otherwise we would be here for hours and hours on end, which some of us like doing that, but just to be conscientious of time, we kind of dive right into it, but we do have other videos that can walk you through different ways of building prompts as well.
Yeah. And specifically, if you're a novelist, Claire's done a few long-form tutorials about how she's used the various decks to build out longer-form novel ideas and longer-form story ideas, which is something that on our channel, we've done a lot of multi-purpose videos, but we haven't done something specifically about like how do you make this live in that big of a space. So definitely, if you search Claire's channel for Deck of Worlds and Story Engine deck, you'll find some great tutorials there as well. which is very cool.
Thank you.
And I'll do a quick time check here because originally we asked you to stay for another 10 minutes, but if you've got time, we could overrun a little bit. So one thing I do want to have a chance to do is figure out, once we've got our cupboard stocked here with an interesting location and the character, where we would sort of bring a bit more of the solo RPG storytelling into it. So like what the next sort of imaginative step with this character could be.
Yeah,
Are you going to stick around with us a little bit longer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah, throw it in if your vote to stick around longer and have Claire hang out with us for a longer period of time. I'm sure.
Yeah. Peer pressure, peer pressure.
Okay, so I was going to draw about 2 more cards to kind of finish up the location. The next card I'll draw is the namesake card, which is kind of gives us an idea of what something in this area could be named, or sometimes I apply it to the character too. Just depends. We have another like coastal flavor. We have of kelp, of the tides, we have foggy, and of grateful sailors. I actually kind of like foggy. I like this idea of like a foggy foothills, and also if we're bringing in a little bit more Snow White flavor, that sort of I think in the Disney version there's kind of fog around the face in the mirror. There's something kind of spooky and mysterious and romantic about the fog in the mountains, the misty mountains. We were talking about The Hobbit earlier. Just like having some mysterious fog floating around.
I
Also,
feel like Foggy could be the 8th dwarf. It does sound like a dwarf name.
it does.
He's just, unlike Sleepy, he's just always waking up from a nap. He's never quite sure what's going on.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll draw 1 more card. I'll draw the Advent card, which is over here. So it kind of tells us like what's going on right now that may or may not have anything to do directly with this story, but you never know. Ooh, nice. The seasonal thaw is causing a major problem. So a flood, feeding frenzy, or secret uncovered by receding snow. Interesting. We do have like foothills, which are sort of like mountains. Something has appeared on the summit of a mountain overnight. A building, a creature, or a sculpture. Okay, both of these are kind of good. I like the thaw, or the something has appeared on the summit of the mountain overnight. Maybe it has to do with like the puzzle pieces, and maybe there's like a whatchamacallit, like the thing that is appearing only appears on the summit at certain times, like every 20 years it appears, and it's only there for like 12 hours, so we all have to go like up the mountain and grab it. So something to do with the puzzles is up there. What is it? Don't know yet, and that's okay. We're still building. We're still figuring it out. And now I get to slip this under Jenga like.
I like the sound effect.
It's actually the sound of the fog.
Yeah.
The talking fog.
Okay.
Very atmospheric.
Oh, good. Okay, so now we have a location, and now we have a character. So if we want to get like a little bit more granular with like the solo RPG stuff, the first thing that really came to my mind is the sister and the Snow White character. They go through the portal, and they end up in or around the workshop. So if we're constructing it like a scene in a book, my first question is, it is more interesting to have the sister and Snow White, I think, enter in the workshop, and the first thing they see is the Burning Man, just like on fire, running around being like, ah! I think that's more action heavy. But it is also possible that they end up outside and there's something else going on. that is also related to the story. So that would be one choice that you could take. You could say, I'm going to explore this scene where they end up in the workshop and talk to the misfit, or I'm going to maybe step outside the story even a little bit and see what is going on out here and see if that's more interesting. So what I would do, and I have to look this up because it's been a minute since I have done this, but in the Mythic, I use the first version of Mythic. I know there's a separate Mythic version too, which I have not explored yet. There is a roll that you do to decide which, I think it's part of the chaos roll, if memory serves. And you can either decide to do the scene that is in your mind or do a totally other kind of scene. I think it's, as I'm talking, I'm remembering. There's the interrupt and there is the, I forget what it's called, but there is, anyway, what you can essentially do is roll a dice and let the dice decide how you proceed. So I actually might do that now. So it doesn't really matter like whether you're following the specific rule. You can kind of make your own rule. Yes, interrupt unexpected. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I don't have it printed off here. Usually I have everything printed off, but it is on my computer, which is over there. So I think what we will do then, if our expected scene is that we go into the workshop and we talk to the Burning Man on fire, the interrupt would be something else totally different happens. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to take a D6 that I have here, and let's just say that the interrupts are even and the expected are odds. And again, it doesn't matter if I end up writing it as like they go talk to the Burning Man. Maybe something else totally cool is going to happen over here, and we really want to explore that. So again, we're just discovering. So I'm going to roll that here. Okay, so that's a 2. So that means it's an interrupt. So we are going to explore something else is happening outside here, outside of the school. Something is happening. What could it be? Now, you have a lot of choice, and it kind of depends on, whatever kind of ideas pop into your head. What I would do is use Mythic has, and I think I do have this one printed off. I would probably roll on a verb. I think they're called the action tables, like a verb and a noun, and then let that kind of give me a little bit of an inspiration of what could be happening. You could also use the story engine cards to kind of prompt you, like use the engine cards or create a whole other character. Like you can kind of pick and choose these tools to do whatever you want. There are rules you can follow, but if you're just kind of like, oh, I'm not quite sure, just kind of grab what is here. I could draw a tarot card and put it here and then take that and go with it. But it's also kind of fun to just flip through the tables that you have and use them in a way that calls to you. So that's kind of what I'm gonna do now. I have here we go. So usually this is used for like motivations and what could be going on. I'm gonna roll on this table. It's a verb and a noun table. It's a 2D100 table. So here's my bowl of dice here. I do have a D100, which is just so awkward to roll. Like,
what is that? I didn't even know they existed.
Oh, they do. It is.
But who uses it? Like, when does this get used?
It just like for fun. I've used them on a couple videos, and they just roll
Does it stop?
No, only if it hits something.
So it doesn't actually like, because I was like, it's so round. How does it stop?
It stops like, oh no. It hits something. It hits what the laptop's sitting on. It's like maybe 79. We can use
maybe questionably
like it's like very
Okay.
I would call that 79. I don't know how clear that shows up on the camera there.
It doesn't. We have to trust you.
Okay.
You could have lied. We would have never known.
Oh no. Oh no. Yeah, so sometimes I'll just roll on different tables and I'll kind of piece it all together in my mind to be like, what is happening out there? And I'll use combination of different prompts to construct a kind of story. And actually the Advent card would be a really great card to draw for this because it's sort of like a little side quest kind of card, but it would all kind of tie in here. Like maybe there's a group of enemies that come upon the sister and Snow White. Okay, so I'm going to say 79 for the first prompt, which is up here, and then I'll roll this other D100 for our second number. So we have 42. So I'm taking 79 and 42, and I have a printed off table here there's 100 action words. So 79 is intolerance. So we have intolerance. And then the second word, 42, the answer to everything, is plot. Intolerance, plot. Okay, intolerance, plot. So a couple different things that makes me think of here. It makes me think of something that is totally anti-Snow White, totally anti the whole idea of the story, and it's something just the opposite of whatever you think is going to happen in the Snow White story is happening outside of the school. Makes me think of that. Me saying earlier about like maybe it's maybe there's like a fight or something that's gonna beset upon the sister and Snow White. Also makes me think they're like henchmen of this face in the mirror have they know that the sister and Snow White have like come through the mirror, and so they're waiting for them. Maybe they were supposed to come into the workshop, but the mirror, the face in the mirror interrupted. It was like, nah, you're gonna come outside and my henchmen are gonna get ya. So this is making me think that they were supposed to go in the workshop, but maybe the misfit who is on fire, the mirror has some kind of power that like a fate. The word in my mind is like a fate interrupting power. The mirror can kind of tug enter the big bad wolf. Yes, exactly. The mirror has this like fate tugging power, and maybe she can't do this all the time with everything, but every so often she can tug at the fate strings of people and make and change people's fates. So maybe the burning misfit wasn't supposed to be on fire or have their experiment explode in their face, but she pulled on a string. And so instead of going inside the workshop like they were supposed to, the sister and Snow White end up outside the workshop. They're like in the schoolyard somewhere. The burning misfit becomes on fire, and the sister and the Snow White are met by intolerance plot. Now that makes me think that there are some kind of henchmen, but they look like something that whatever now the opposite of what Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, whatever the opposite of that is what the henchmen look like.
if we're working with a mirror, you know, a mirror is about opposites,
Mm.
right? It's about literally presenting the opposing image or reflected images. So I
Mm.
wonder if there is like a mirror world version of them, or even just like the mirror simulacrum, like a version of them that's made from mirror glass or something like that.
Ooh.
Could be
that.
cinematically cool.
I love that. I love that. I think that is so interesting. I love that, Peter, actually. And I love that maybe they're really fragile too. If they're like made from like glass or like pieces of reflective elements, and they like come up from the ground or from the sky or from the out of the fog and just kind of come together like this and to face off the sister and the and Snow White. And I also don't know like what kind of, you know, powers or kind of fighting skills that they would have. So at maybe here the dwarfs are the henchmen. I love maybe. Alice like card people. I love that too. Great ideas. These are great ideas. So at this point, I would probably take out something like Iron Sworn. I would probably go more in depth into like giving the sister and Snow White actual stats and actually fight this out. Or I would have my intuition here would be maybe Snow White would try to talk to these creatures to be like, hey, we're here, or like, what are you? Or hey, we just came from that place. Are you cool? But probably the sister would have some idea of like, no, these are bad guys. And maybe she might have some kind of weapon that would dispel them. And that's another interesting question too. Has the sister encountered something like this before? Is she prepared? And actually, these are all good questions to ask the Oracle. I would do, so from Mythic Variations 2, this is a role I do a lot on my channel. This is sort of a modified roll that I've modified. So I'll roll 2d10. And basically, I add a weight to that roll, whether I think something is highly likely or not likely at all to happen. And the weight is my own. It's totally based on like whether I want it to happen and like whether I think it's interesting to happen. So usually you ask like a yes and no question for this. And my big question is does the sister expect to meet these like glass kind of a fragile henchman creatures? Does she expect to see them during this particular journey? Because that will determine whether she's prepared to fight or not. So I'm going to roll this. We want a roll that is above 11. I think, and depending on what you say, adds the number weight to the roll. I'm going to say very likely, which is a +4 to the roll. There is a specific table for this, going from like somewhat likely to like very likely, and it's weighted by like 2s. So I'm going to say very likely +4 that this is going to happen. So I'm going to add 4 to whatever this roll is. So 6 +4 +4 is 14. So it's above 11. So that means it is a yes. So she expected to meet henchmen, like glass henchmen. So what that tells me that she has expected to encounter henchmen is that she would have weapons or a weapon or some way to dispel the creatures. So we can go in a couple different directions with this. We could immediately start a fight scene. Now, if you don't want to have a fight scene, which is totally valid, that can also take hours and hours to play through. Maybe this is like a one and done kind of battle role where you just kind of evens and odds it, and maybe odds is like they beat it without any kind of consequence, and maybe odds is like, oh, you beat it, but there's some kind of consequence. You can also use Iron Sworn rolls for that as well. What actually, I'm kind of itching to do this. I never get to draw the there's the aspect cards that have like the
item properties.
Yes.
Yeah, I love those. They're fun. They're a really interesting deep cut.
Yeah. I kind of like to draw that now because I'm kind of curious what the sister might bring with her in her bag of tricks. If she's really prepared, like what would she bring with her? So I'm gonna draw that here because I'm just very curious what that could be. Okay, we have, I am kind of picturing this to be like a sword or a knife, but maybe it's not, maybe it's something else. So whatever that item is that nullifies or amplifies magic. We have made from crumbling stone, which is very interesting. That could definitely beat any kind of glass figures. That compels truth telling, also kind of useful and interesting. That only works in one location, also very interesting. Maybe this is a weapon that doesn't work in their fantasy world where they're from. Maybe it only works in this alternate tech world. And maybe that's a rule that we could make for this story, that only technology only works in the place where it's from. But that would be interesting too, because then you couldn't really take things from the world back to like a different world. So that's worth exploring too.
I don't know if it's a corner tuck, but the idea that's like only works where it's from and made of crumbling stone, so it could be crumbling because it's not from where it's from.
Oh, things start to break down when they're so that's nice because it lets you push the boundaries a little bit where like you can do it, but the thing might break. It could crumble, it could burn out the last of its power, since that was one of the things I was thinking about.
Yes, I love that. Okay, I love that. Definitely. Okay, so does this mean then she's brought something from her world that is made from some kind of stone that will kill these henchmen, but it's gonna break down like pretty much immediately after use. Okay, I love that. They're kind of on opposite sides of the card, so we'll put that here. I wanted to find the 20. Oh, okay. We'll put that here to kind of represent that's like the item. So in my mind then, if she is prepared, if she has this item that will like definitely work against these henchmen, that makes me think that she kind of cuts them down, just like woof, woof, woof. And we could do a roll for that if you want to see like how successful she is. And again, to keep it really simple, I could do another mythic roll on that. Actually, I think I just will.
The danger of like trying to shatter a glass enemy or a mirror enemy obviously is like shards and secondary damage.
Yeah, exactly. And I do kind of like the idea that she cuts them down, but gets like little nicks and like starts bleeding like a little bit, because that would show us as a reader, like, hey, this is the skill that the sister has. And it would also make Snow White be like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, I didn't know you could fight. Okay, I'm going to just make this a mythic roll then. I'm going to ask, does the sister cut the glass henchman down with ease? Okay, let's say the weight. I think, again, I'm just going to go +4, like very likely. So we're trying to get above an 11 with the roll and +4. Does she cut down the glass henchman with ease? Ooh, that is a 6. 3 and 3 is 6 plus 4 is 10.
Just
So
short.
no.
Just shy.
No. So yeah, just shy. That does make me think that there is like a whole fight that happens here. And maybe there's too many henchmen. Maybe she starts cutting them down and she's like, haha, but then they reform. And maybe her glass or her stone starts to break down. And maybe that's when we have our misfit come out and start running around on fire. And this person enters into the fray. So yeah, do you want me to like keep going here? Do you want me to like bring in another?
If it was like maybe just recap, since we've like shared so many different ideas, and we kind of like this, we've kind of gone a little bit in this direction, a little bit in this direction. Maybe this is a good time to like kind of just share the story thus far.
Yeah.
And
okay.
what and where you could possibly go. I mean, clearly it indicates that there's going to be a lot more things about to happen going forward, but like maybe just like recap for everyone watching sort of where we are at, the plot, the character, why we kind of set up a scene and then this interruption that happened.
For sure. Okay, so bring it back to the beginning. We started with an idea of a Snow White fairy tale retelling, either closely or like kind of vaguely inspired by. We have a young woman who is the titular Snow White, who is sent to live with her betrothed's family, and they're kind of mysterious. And they have this magical mirror. And one night, Snow White sees her betrothed's sister use this mirror, say something to the mirror, and she steps through the mirror into this seemingly other world. Now, presumably, Snow White follows her. We are kind of making...
May I interject with a very quick pitch that could...
Yes.
I know we're trying to consolidate here, but I think this could help consolidate too. So if she sneak follows her through and the sister's not aware that she's there and she's not supposed to be here and she sees the sister losing a fight, the choice of like, when do I intervene to help becomes really interesting because she's not supposed to be here. This is a little bit of a betrayal of trust. This is like following and snooping. And if we know the fight's not going well, then that becomes a really interesting choice for that character.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I really like that, actually. Okay, so Snow White sees the sister go through the mirror portal. Snow White follows her in, and we arrive in a foothills area, and we see we're outside of the school. We learned from our roles that they were supposed to end up in a workshop where our misfit inventor lives. However, the mirror has a mysterious power that can kind of redirect the people who use its power and put them elsewhere where it wants them to be. So instead of ending up in a workshop like the sister wanted to be, the sister and Snow White end up just outside of this workshop school where these glass henchmen are waiting for them, and the glass henchmen start to attack. Meanwhile, we probably have this burning misfit inventor in the school, and in my mind I'm picturing him like running outside. Maybe in the background he comes and joins the fray, perhaps. But we have Snow White watching this fight that is not going well. So where I would go from here is we would have to examine Snow White's character, because we don't really know a lot about her. What kind of skills does she have? I would probably use something like Ironsworn to pick some stats for her. And Ironsworn is a solo first RPG, and it's pretty easy to like build up a character sheet for a person. And I would do that. I would do that for Snow White, and I would do that for the sister and probably the misfit as well, if we're entering a combat situation, so that I can really start to see in my mind like exactly who goes where in what positions. It's also very possible. This is another area to explore. If Snow White is betrothed to this mysterious family, what is the relations between these two families like going in? Like maybe she does not trust or like the sister, and maybe the two families are feuding and they have come together for diplomatic reasons. Maybe she followed the sister to, do who knows what. And maybe she wants these glass henchmen to kill her. Maybe she doesn't care. We have to kind of examine what's the pre-existing relationship between these two women. I would like to think that she would not trust these glass henchmen. They're weird. This is a thing I haven't seen before. So like we have to explore what she's wrestling with there before we really know how she's going to act. If Snow White is my PC, if she's my player character, then it's possible that if I'm just playing this as a game, Claire, would feel inclined to help the presumably human sister, because I'm a helpful person, and that is I try to be lawful or neutral good in my games. So I would feel inclined to help the sister, but I don't know if that is Snow White's choice. So I would have to, maybe make a choice between maybe Snow White doesn't want to help her, but maybe Claire the player does. So that's like a good difference between like what does writer Claire do and what does player Claire do. We could also, we didn't use the lore deck at all, but we could take out like the faction cards and kind of explore the two different families and like what's their deal. We could also use the faction cards for the henchmen and kind of build out the villains and like what is their deal? What is even this world that we've entered into? There's like a maybe abandoned school that has this eccentric misfit like doing experiments. Like why? Just kind of like stepping back and examining everything that's going on here, and then going back into the fight scene with like a little bit more knowledge would probably be my next step.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting hearing you walk through this process to just show just how much that these stories, whether like these solo RPGs or this writing, is very much powered by you as the creative, and that you're using the story engine, Deck of Worlds, Lore Masters deck, Mythic, or like using these resources to just give you more opportunities to do that. And that if we create these prompts, that there's more than one idea and more than one storyline that you can create. And, even coming, with some of the thoughts that are coming through the chat, showing that everyone is interpreting these things slightly differently and that they can take this RPG on their own journey. And I mean, even in our conversations together, how I sort of had a different take. And even as you're describing these things, I'm finding what's resonating with me more, and probably what journey I would choose to go on versus you, or even Peter, or probably even Eric. So I think it's like, and that's only from just like, one character, like, one set, like one prompt with story engine and one world and one aspect card item, right? Not even like there's like so many ways you can go now with this thing, whether it's digging more into the item, digging more into the motivations of like Snow White or the sister or her relationship with the betrothed, and it's really kind of showing me the possibilities of solo RPG. I think one of the ones that I was thinking about, even when at one point you were deciding how whether they fight the henchmen off with ease and stuff. I remember that was where like the control freak came in for me. I was like, I have already decided the ending. I don't want to roll. Like I don't want to be left to chance whether like this, whether this character is going to succeed in fighting the henchmen. And I was like so sad when the roll like didn't succeed. I was like, no, this is exactly what I wanted to avoid.
I totally hear you on that. And like that's why if you use something like the mythic like chaos determination roll, you can weight it so that like, oh, I really want this to happen. But you're right, it can still fail and you might still have to. But again, you don't have to do anything. You can, if you wanted, you can just be like, and she fights it off with these, and then the sister and Snow White go and they meet the misfit and it's all fine. But I would say it is kind of more interesting that the roll failed.
I would say in some ways that's like probably the beauty of solo RPG is that because you're doing it by yourself, you can choose in those moments whether you want the journey or the excitement of just not knowing what happens next. So you bring in that randomization element of the dice, or if let's say you're just not emotionally in that place, to choose to just like take control of the scene a little bit. I guess that's like probably where writer Moroki would come in and just be like, I'm controlling the scene now. This is where I want to be. And then maybe for the next scene in the next setting, I can choose to randomize it.
And I think the other thing I'd recommend for if you're using solo RPGs and you want something to happen, or if you're like using them as a way to explore the ways that a scene could resolve for writing, because this could be a way to decide like what happens in a scene that you're writing where you're not sure how it should go. You can sort of test different contingencies, but make the failure condition failing forward. So it's basically either success with a complication, so like the sister wins the fight but gets hurt, or success but like with compromise. So like the sister could only win the fight if Snow White gets involved. But yeah, taking those failure rolls and just finding ways to like still support what you want to have happen, have the story move in the direction that you want, but make sure that it costs something, can be really fun for like adding that bit of tension in with the progress of the plot.
So the question I have for you, Claire, as we start wrapping up the live stream here is, did this move in the direction that excites you to continue writing your next best-selling novel, considering that you said that this was going to be possibly an idea for your next novel?
Yeah, it does. And I actually am glad that fighting rule failed, because like I thought that something might be happening outside, but I was very curious about learning more about this puzzle and this misfit. But the fact that that roll failed gave us kind of more information about the world, like the fact that maybe things don't work very long in a world that it's not from. Like all of that is very interesting world building snacks that I can like kind of take away and hoard and develop more. But yeah, this is even if a session doesn't go how I expect, there's always something more interesting. That's kind of the nice thing about working with what I call like the oracle, like working with a different part of my brain almost, that'll like come in and be like, oh, actually you can do this. Actually, you can do this. And it kind of builds very nicely upon what I thought was going to happen. So yeah.
And I'll say, The English Patient is widely considered to be one of the best novels ever written. It's certainly among my favorites, by Michael Ondaatje. That whole novel started with just the image of a burning man in a desert. But It is perhaps he randomly rolled up some prompts on a rolling table and ended up with a burning man and a desert, and because of that we have the English patient. We don't know his process. Almost certainly this is demonstrably false, but point being, you can take away the one ingredient that really you can take the one ingredient that really sticks with you and figure out why it sticks with you and run with that. And if that's the only thing you take from a session, you still may have something really beautiful and interesting on your hands.
Yeah. So if folks want to, check out Claire's YouTube at Claire Marshall to see all the work that she does and maybe more of her, solo RPG adventures or more of her creative writing adventures and using all the various different tools you saw today, because I know there's probably so many more that we haven't even seen you pull a tarot card yet for this particular lay. And maybe you'll continue this particular story. No pressure, but maybe the folks are going to be very interested and you continue doing this or other. Make sure you check out and subscribe to her YouTube. And of course, you can see Claire's work at faeryinkpress.com. I know Peter at the beginning mentioned some of the amazing novels and creative work that she does. I am like a YA novel freak, so I have a feeling that I'm gonna have to pick up some of your works, Claire. I find that this is broad sweeping statement. So let me be clear here, because this is just based on my experience. There's a part of me that sometimes struggles at reading like very like high fantasy or very, I guess, like adult fiction as an adult, because my life is very stressful and I don't want more stress in my life. And sometimes I find that a lot of literature that is catered towards adults is hard hitting. And I'm not ready for some like horrific thing to happen at times. It's why like sometimes we're like, have you watched this television show? It's brilliant. I'm like, I'm sure it is. I read the plot. I probably will be stressed for the next 8 weeks if I watch this. But I think YA, because it's meant for an audience that is, usually developing, learning things, it's meant to educate in some ways, but you can't always just slap like a young adult reader with, something super heavy and just challenge them. You have to give it to them in a I don't want to say gentler way, but we have to be kind of more considerate of how we communicate these things to people in order for them to absorb and discuss and learn from these things. I find YA novel just touches me in right that sweet spot, I find as an adult. So I'm very excited to check out some of your work.
Thank you. YA is a great form of escapism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and walking us through, I guess, the construction of a world and a scene and then how to resolve it, which was very fun. And like we mentioned, you can go see more of this in action on Claire's YouTube. So we hope that you'll do that. And I'll say the Story Engine Workshop series will return next week with a special guest that I'm getting increasingly excited about, because I've been listening to a podcast that Maroki recorded with this guest earlier. Do you want to talk a little bit about who's coming next week, Maroki?
Sure. So next week we'll be joined by Chef Shane Chartrand, who is a chef. I mean, literally a chef. He was one step away from being a semifinalist on Top Chef Canada. And very notably, he's an Indigenous chef. So we're going to be diving into talking about like food culture and why that shapes a world and why food could, like not just fleshing out a world or making a world more interesting, but how we could actually define a whole universe or define a whole world. And I think not just through food, but we have the very unique opportunity to be digging into the lens of an Indigenous chef's experience. So talking about the colonization of food culture and how that influences a culture as a whole, and getting a chance to kind of learn from an expert in Indigenous cuisine. So if you're building worlds with that particular take, it helps us make more informed decisions when we're creating worlds like that. So very excited to bring, Chef Shane's experience for our live stream next week. Our live streams are running every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So if you don't want to miss out, make sure you go to our channel. You can kind of turn your notifications on for each week so that you don't end up missing it. But of course, if you're not able to attend because you are in Australia and it's currently 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning over there, you can always catch our replays on our channels as well, including this one.
Yeah,
so,
shout out to the replay crew. People watching us in the future, we love you. We appreciate you.
We really love you for how much interest you show in our channel and our work. So Claire, thank you so much for bringing all your creativity to this table and waking up everyone's minds and really teaching everyone what the land of solo RPGs are all about.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Awesome. And we'll see you all next week.
See you all next week.